I believe that most of you know that it is thanks to the community that is listening and the community of the past that has listened, sharing their love and support, that we have been able to build 2 villages out in East Africa. And across those villages live nearly 300 children who were living without any parents or guardians, and the majority of them special needs, living in isolation, suffering and neglect of a level that is hard to even comprehend in this world. Thank you to everybody who has made our family, our vision, and all of that love and healing possible. Without you, there is no way that any of that would exist. The majority of what we do is made possible by our partners. Our partners partner with everything that we do for our family to provide care for hundreds of special needs children, many of which severely ill. Our partners partner as little as $1 a month, up to whatever God compels them to be able to share. And it is that guaranteed monthly support whereby we are able to structure the majority of all that we do on the back of, and then of course beyond there, our prayer. To all who already partner with us, thank you for your love and support. But for those of you who may be interested in partnering, please visit www.sharetanzania.com/partnership to find out more. Thank you on behalf of my family and our beautiful team, and of course the heart of our family, our beautiful children, for all of the love and support. We simply could not be where we are without you. God bless, guys. Bye. It would appear that the majority of humanity is aware that the Freemasonic societies are a profoundly powerful collective of men and women, often from the working class all the way up to the absolute upper echelons of eliteness. It would appear that many know that this society has great influence over the human story. But for many, it has been thrown into the basket alongside any other conspiracy that does not fit the mainstream image of society that we were given by our media outlets and by our education systems and so on. For those who do not grasp the power of this society, let me open with a clear fact. The Freemasonic society, the Freemasonic world leaders built the USA. The cornerstone of Washington DC, the first stone to be laid when building the city, was done so in a cornerstone Masonic ceremony by George Washington, a Grand Master of the Freemasons. The capital city of the world's most powerful economy was started with a Freemasonic ritual by a Freemasonic US president. The city itself was architecturally designed by a French Freemason, whose name I have forgotten. I will put it on the screen. The money of the US, the early money, and around the world, we place leaders on these bills and notes that we print. And Benjamin Franklin was a Grand Master of the Freemasons, and of course is famously part of the US dollar bills that they print. The US dollar bill, the $1 bill, has a pyramid with an all-seeing eye. If you draw an inverted pentagram on that pyramid and all-seeing eye, the corners of that pentagram will capture 5 letters, and those letters are Mason. The royal family of the UK have all been Masons and Grand Masters, and at the time that the US was established, the King of England, who at the time was a distant relative of George Washington, who was a Freemason, was a Grand Master of Freemasonry. The Freemasonic Society is not some conspiratorial nonsense. It is the reality, the fact of the foundation of the world in which we have become dependent upon the very wonderful and needed transport links, food networks, municipality networks, sanitation networks and management. And yet it was born by the Freemasonic societies. Now we must ask the question, is Freemasonry, as we often get into this unusual space, is it dark? Is it evil? Is it there for the detriment of humanity? When we ask such questions, I feel it is wise to look at the events taking place today. An Israeli will say that an Iranian is evil, often. And an Iranian will say that an Israeli is evil. And yet on both sides you have parents and brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and grandparents who with great love and tenderness raise their children. And so the question comes, who truly is the wrongdoer and who is the right doer? In short, what I am pointing at is that the actions that some of us judge as inappropriate are often founded in a space of genuine, pure love, but then intercepted by interdimensional forces, by demonic forces, by lower astral energies and forms that wish to influence humanity for their own benefit and gain. The Freemasonic societies therefore need to be understood, and we must also understand the arms and branches of those societies. And at this time many feel that President Trump is there to fight against the Freemasonic elitist cabal that is the puppet master, the one pulling the strings on the direction of humanity's story. And yet I wish to share into with great love and tenderness, without wanting to offend or violate or accuse anyone inappropriately, that the image I am seeing is not one that fits that narrative. And I will get into that momentarily. In fact, I feel, and somehow may I say fear, not in the sense of feeling fear, but in the expression of the term, that the current world events that we are witnessing are in no way accidental, but an orchestrated effort by a planet-wide cabal to steer humanity to the world system that they want to see, that many have called the New World Order. Before I expand into that, I feel there are 3 small topics I must address. The first being that whenever the one sitting here speaking sits down to record, the goal is freedom. It is to share the freedom that the one sitting here found. A great freedom away from the struggle of the mind, away from the chains of the fallen world or the matrix in which we live. What I have often found myself calling the energy extraction matrix. The freedom that was found was profoundly liberating. To be able to love without attachment, to be able to forgive far more easily than ever before. To be able to feel this deep sense of inner peace with this love and peace that surpasses understanding. That is always the want. However, in arriving in that state of consciousness, we increase the bandwidth of reality that we decode. And as such, we begin to see the chains, be they structures or psychological patterns or developed structures in the world, physical structures, that are keeping humanity in chains, in bondage to the fallen world, to the matrix. Therefore, there are two roads that one can take when sharing a talk or a video. One is to speak into the internal freedom and help humanity to become aware of the human species' flaw, of constantly grabbing at the information around them in the world and holding it as an identity as tightly as possible. When we become aware that we are even in the process of taking awareness, which is the freedom to have your intelligence moving free and malleable and animated by the sacred, by the voice of the living God. When we become aware that that awareness is being dragged into identities, and we become aware that there's a mechanism of thought that grabs and creates identities, the grabbing can cease and the awareness can become free. And in becoming free, the awareness expands and we begin to see the chains that were holding us in place. This is one direction we may take. The other is to speak to the chains themselves, to speak to the chains that are holding us in place in the hope the chain breaks and we begin to question our reality and question our position and where our weaknesses are due to any deception that has been fed to us, and with it bring forth our strength. So you can speak of the chains, or you can speak of the internal freedom that can bring you to be aware of the chains of your own accord. This video will speak to the chains predominantly, but I hope I can interject some of what the one sitting here has found to be the internal freedom to see them. And the other small topic is that when we speak against people who have been positioned in positions of power on our screen and in our media, many humans can have an emotional attachment to them. And as such, when you say something negative, it can give a sense of outrage, or it can give a sense internally of being attacked, because we have incorporated this human through our trust as part of the identity. And so if anything stirs, I ask that you remain aware of the stirring and do not become an emotional being, for emotional beings are easily controlled by the fallen. But those who can be aware of emotion have a different position in consciousness in our world. I know many of you are from the US, and I will speak into the US, and I will do so immediately. But that's why I caveat this, as I know that for some I have seen it can be distressing. Yet truth must be spoken, even if it is the exploration of understanding what is happening. When we look, therefore, to the US, which I will just quickly put this in now. It is easy to feel that we have a hero before us and much good is being done. There will be no perfect leadership. You will never be able to please and appease every human being with your decisions. However, the Freemasons have a socialist technocratic arm, and that socialist technocratic arm is called the Fabian Society. The Fabian Society, which I have spoken of often on my channel, have an emblem that is a wolf undressing from sheep's clothing, meaning they have embraced deception as a virtue. And we all know that the Spirit of truth is the Holy Spirit of Christ, and the spirit of deception is the father of lies, the ruler of this world, Satan. So we want to stay away from the father of lies and his ways as much as possible. And as such, the majority here will agree that deception is by no means the best way to bring humanity to its highest good and its greatest road. If anything, it is inappropriate. We do not want to be deceived, we don't want our children deceived, and therefore we do not expect others to do that as we do not do it to their. The Fabian Society is powerful, and the Fabian Society is the founder of the current ruling party of the UK, the Labour Party. They are also the founder of the London School of Economics. When you speak of Freemasons and Illuminati, the illuminated ones, the name Rothschild comes up frequently. And Rothschild, in the 1800s, there is only one record that connects the Rothschilds to the Freemasons. And that is where the two brothers signed up and became members of the Freemasonic Lodge in the UK. After that, there is nothing. And it is as if great lengths were taken to remove and hide the Rothschild connection to the Masons. For why can you trace UK royalty with ease to the Masonic lodges, but this one family, you only have two members ever, and then all data is not present. The most powerful and wealthy family in Europe join the Masonic Lodge. The public record is available, but then absolute radio silence, as it were. The Rothschilds are, as I've said, powerful. They are a banking family. They are responsible for the creation of the State of Israel. The Balfour Declaration was addressed to a member of the Rothschild family, offering the State of Israel to become the nation that it currently is. Rothschild sat on the board of the London School of Economics, founded by the Fabian Society, the technocratic socialist arm of the Freemasonic Society. The Fabian Society are powerful, and their technocratic goal ties into the want for a new world order. The New World Order is another attempt at a one world government, which all power structures have attempted, it would appear, from ancient Egypt to the Romans to today. Only different tactics are being applied, even if it is the same bloodlines applying them, which is arguably the case. Rothschild is so wealthy and powerful behind the scenes that that name must come forward into this conversation. For as I said in a recent video, how can this be chance? How? It's mathematically impossible that this is chance, that this has happened simply by coincidence. That Donald Trump is currently the president of the US, and has called for Greenland and Canada to become part of the US. Donald Trump has had a public spat which seemed unusually immature in nature for men of such power and such success with Elon Musk. And Elon Musk is said to be one of the wealthiest men on earth, but also a man who has the strongest AI public technology available. Musk's AI tech outweighs Chinese AI according to the Chinese ruling party. They tested the AI systems on vehicles recently and said Tesla was far better than the others, and they did so to reduce accidents in their country. So Musk has the most powerful technology, it would appear, on the planet, with AI that is public facing. Musk's grandfather was arrested in Canada for creating a map that would launch the first technocracy. And that map was Greenland, Canada, and the USA. The first technocratic state that will govern the world. Now, what is a technocracy? It is a world that is ruled not by democracy, but by those who have the most powerful tech. I saw that Elon Musk was in the process of creating AI judges for the court and things of this nature. And as such, we see the world moving in such an unusual direction as that. Elon Musk has an argument with the active US president, is launching a political party called the American Party, which will challenge the two-party system. Probably will win in the next election or the one after, as it would appear it is designed for this to have taken place. And by that time, presumably Greenland and Canada will be under the US. And when Musk becomes a leader, or whomever he appoints in charge of his political party, they will launch the technocracy based on the very map his grandfather was arrested for. Are we to be asked to be so docile that we can believe that that is purely coincidental? That Musk is running for the third party system, is profoundly popular, and the US president he's arguing with, which created him in a space to make that party, is trying to get Greenland and Canada to become the US. And Musk's grandfather said the first technocratic state to govern the world should be Greenland, Canada, and US. It's mathematically impossible for that not to have been a pre-orchestrated event, and that unfortunately ties Trump in with this pre-orchestrated event. And that is where I ask those who have felt deeply that there was hope here to not simply turn away and be angry, for they may be men who truly are good men and believe that this is the best thing for humanity. However, they have also made comfort with deception and secrecy. Our world may well be a world of paid actors as world leaders. Emmanuel Macron is the head of the EU and the president of France. He is a product. He is the president because of his career, short career, which somehow he was catapulted as a partner of the Rothschild banking system in Europe. Keir Starmer is the prime minister of a political party, the UK leader, that was created by the technocratic socialist arm of the Freemasonic societies. Trump was bailed out of bankruptcy by reorganizing his debt through Rothschild and Wilbur Ross, a 30-year Rothschild affiliate and employee. We are living in what appears to be a staged event, a staged period to lead humanity towards a pre-planned, preordained destiny of a technocracy that will be governed by the same ruling elite from behind the scenes as is governing today. With that said, let me move back to what Freemasonry was and what it has become. What it initially was were the greatest thinkers and enlightened minds gathering together. Many in the early days were Christian. It did not go against their beliefs to be Freemasons. It was a society to develop and better humanity. Without them and the philanthropic behaviors in the early days, you would not have the USA. It would not be present. Without them, we would not have the hospitals and so on that we do. But it is important to know this. Anything can be infiltrated. And as it says in Scripture, in the end times, the synagogue of Satan will pose as godly people, as Jews. Remember, the Bible says a Jew is not a Jew who is one outwardly but inwardly. It is not the frills and outward. It is the connection to the living God that makes us a godly being. It makes us a human that is favored by our Creator. Nothing to do with DNA and genetics. Zero to do with this. If the synagogue of Satan is correct, then even those who are becoming the hands and feet of Satan in this world may well be under the spell of deception. The initial Freemasonic way was for the betterment of humanity, but when the most wealthy people in the world enter those systems and those societies, they quickly dominate, such as the power of money over the human consciousness and wealth. When these societies start with purity and then the most wealthy people on the planet join them, the most wealthy people on the planet are also subject to the highest levels of temptation. If you think that the working class man who is addicted to pornography would not indulge in the real thing if they were wealthy enough to be embracing their entire fantasies and worldly desires, when they can't even stop themselves from doing that act with a computer screen, then we are mistaken, for this comes from looking outward to blame instead of looking inward to see the weakness of humanity that is being used in our fellow man that has fallen victim to the we wrestle not against flesh and blood but spiritual wickedness in high places, to that spiritual wickedness in high places. In the beginning, to understand Freemasons and what they believed, it starts by saying that we live in a world where survival of the fittest is the rule of law. And yet when we connect with Christ, something in us disagrees with the survival of the fittest rule of law. We see it as people begin to say, I don't want to be involved in this. I would rather not kill something for me to eat. I would rather not see war. I would rather do as little harm as possible. In nature, in the plains of Africa, where I have spent more time than most ever will be able to, and I thank God for that part of my life, doing what we do in service, to have that nearby. We romanticize nature. But the plains of Africa are violent and grotesque. They are not purely romantic and beautiful. When a baby animal is born and barely takes a few breaths, and an omnivore comes and starts to eat it alive, not to kill it outright, but to eat it alive, that awareness, that soul has appeared and taken a breath and instantaneously is entering a matrix of extreme suffering and pain that is incomprehensible. And we say, well, that's God's beautiful design. That is not a God that I know. The God I know has no nature of that kind. And then people will say, well, without it, you can't know love. When I am in a room full of love, we don't need to remember fear to feel that here and now. Love is not on a spectrum with fear and pain. Where love is, fear is not. It is not a spectrum. Love is one way. Fear is another. And the two are not needed to know one another. The survival of the fittest way is vulgar. Pregnant animals unable to run to safety, ripped apart by predators. This is not beautiful. This is not holy. And you can say, well, you are judging it. No, I have been in the presence of the emittance of the fear and the pain of those animals rather than seeing it on a screen. And I don't perceive that the God of all creation wants men and women to behave based on the rules of survival of the fittest. If so, the hundreds of special needs children we are guardian to would be simply left to die as they are not fit. The survival of the fittest is therefore an element that original creator is not promoting. According to the Nag Hammadi, the creator of our world, where the scripture says it is a fallen world, the creator of our world is labeled the archons. And the archons are basically this amnesic or perhaps conscious false creator God force that wishes to create spaces where the light of creator can inhabit that space, and then that light can be extracted by allowing it to enter sentience and bringing it from the heights of divinity that we are all connected to as the children of God, which we are, down into frequencies of extreme suffering and fear, where tangled in those frequencies of fear and suffering and the worship of the world, be it through things like I mentioned, the porn extraction matrix of the planet, that hidden inside these frequencies is still the divine light, and they fatten, for want of a better term, themselves on that divine light. They are separated from it. They cannot access it due to their pride and arrogance and rebellion and wish to be as God, to be God, rather than to unite in unity and accept your place within Creator as a point of awareness. The want is to control and be. And so, to control and be, energy is required, which I've mentioned in other videos, and that energy that is required is being extracted from we humans and other sentient life in the extreme horror of the survival of the fittest matrix in which we live. Therefore, the Freemasonic belief began with saying, the first among us to have built 4 walls, a roof, and a door is the founding father of the Freemasonic way. For in that simple creation, that act of masonry, that act of building, they created an own artificial environment that separated those humans from the jungle. It separated from the insects and all of the diseases they bring. It separated them from predators. It separated them from the weather and the troubles of that. And it gave space for enlightenment or growth, or at least amplification of knowledge, creativity and intelligence to take place. So the Masons perceive in the origin of all they believe, logically, that the first to build 4 walls, a roof and a door is the founder of the Masonic way. That's what gave birth to a space where humans could become illuminated, for they were separated from the survival of the fittest matrix. When that is understood and you come to a developing country, you will see the reality is that where people struggle for food and water, education and understanding is very low in comparison to the areas where people have easy access. In short, the further away from the survival of the fittest matrix you get, the more empathetic and loving and creative we are able to become. Yes, stress is important for creativity, but you need space to pause. You need a safe zone to rest. That's what the Masons began the very core of their belief around. Today, however, it would appear that they have been infiltrated, corrupted. Their ability to accept all spectrums of the fallen world as a valid tool is a means of surrendering to the God of this world, the Archons. Having the faith to stand on truth and not use deception is a space where you create a frequency inside this world where you are able to create and manifest, but also hear the guidance of the all-knowing living God, the creator of all. To hear that guidance, we must alter something within the way by which we are living our lives. When you understand that they have embraced every spectrum of the survival of the fittest matrix, you can understand how they fell. For as it is metaphorically spoken in scripture, the leaven in bread, unleavened bread. If there is even a little bit of leaven, the bread will rise. If there is even a little bit of sin that is unrepented of in a man, if there is even a little bit of world worship that becomes a way of life, be it something like, I mentioned this for the 3rd time, the pornography matrix, something I feel is one of the greatest weapons to harm humanity, and an artificial predator introduced by the Freemasonic societies. I'll get onto that momentarily. But you can understand by embracing these frequencies how those frequencies and the other dimensional beings that rest in them were able to bring down well-meaning societies. They thought they could cheat the system. They thought they were strong enough to use every spectrum of human potentiality to get what they want. But they were always destined to fail as the other dimensional astral beings who rest in the frequencies of deception, the frequencies of lack of empathy and the ability to be a psychopath and kill, were able to come into this dimension. So many were godly men that were influenced by the demonic, and they had not realized how heavily they were targeted and attacked. The Masons' greatest secret is also their greatest weakness, and I will share that momentarily. But in creating the world that they have created, they also mimicked the God of this world, which is not Christ. The God of this world is Satan. Therefore, they recognize that in this world, as we have recognized as a species, if you take predators out of certain areas, the ecology becomes imbalanced. So they introduce wolves to a location, they thin out the deer. This brings back the foliage, it brings back insects, it regenerates the whole environment. The system of the survival of the fittest fallen world that we live in therefore is finely balanced between predator and prey. The artificial predators that have been created for we humans are no different to the predatory internal weaknesses that see animals die in nature. The gazelle who keeps eating the grass, and whilst the others are alert, is gluttonizing, it hasn't stopped to be aware of the moment, is the one that is most likely to get picked off by the predator, as it is the one visually that's less conscious, but it is the one that will react last when the predator pounces. Inside our society, pornography, which is not a harmless industry, is largely a free industry, as I recall deeply from a teenage boy that was using that horror show or was selling his energy into that extraction matrix. Today, there is no way a man who is hooked on that could build or achieve what the one sitting here speaking has built and achieved. Impossible. And that is just a fact. But that is a failing not only of the man, but of the false predatory system that has been thrust on us. The free pornography, it is a predator. The man who is using it is taking his vitality, inviting into his home this secrecy and this darkness, and is affecting his entire family. And that is a predator that has taken a potential leader on this planet, a potential game-changing human on this planet, and turned them into a cell where its soul vitality can be extracted, and it is willing to give its soul vitality so long as it gets to look at naughty pictures and feel 5 cents pleasure. That is an artificial predator created by the Freemasonic system. Now, to run a little deeper, the energy that is being extracted, it dates back to technologies and understanding that we are not grasping. If we are not told it in our schools and by the mainstream media, we presume that it's not consensus. But this is such a narrow, restricted state of information. And so, the Masonics' greatest fear. Well, first of all, let us establish that it is hard to say it is the Freemasons, because it is not. They are simply a powerful society that has been infiltrated. And in that infiltration, an agreement that deception is acceptable is present. And there are those who we have trusted and we have put faith in that are deceiving us, but if you knew them personally, may well say to you, I'm doing it for the greater good, I wish there was another way. But nevertheless, it is now that there is a force at play, it is non-human, and it is influencing our institutions, it is influencing the societies to the point they have become corrupted, and deception has become the rule of order. Their greatest weakness is also their greatest secret. The 33rd degree of Freemasonry is something I believe most have heard of. And the whole notion of Freemasonry is you have the elite at the top of the pyramid who control and rule everything. And at the bottom you must have working class people propping you up. But in the eyes of the illuminated or the Illuminati, they do not perceive that the working class have a disadvantage. They perceive that the working class can move their way up the ladder so long as they don't fall off for the false predatory forces such as pornography or alcohol constantly and things of this nature. But their greatest secret and the 33rd degree is something the first degree have no clue about. If you meet any Masons, some are very lovely people, they have no idea what the 33rd degree is. They know it's steeped in secrecy. But in reality, it is quite simply that the human organism has 33 vertebrae. And inside the human organism is a special substance, a sacred substance born of the colostrum in the brain. I have used the term sacred secretion to describe this chrism, this Christ oil within us. That Christ oil travels the 33 vertebrae, enters the skull, and gives the human access to a broader toolbox of human function, and with it a broader bandwidth of reality. At this present moment in time, they are has risen. Now the word Christ